On April 14th, 2022, the life of 12-year-old Sean Daugherty was cut short in Yorktown, Virginia. Found hanging in his backyard, his death was ruled a suicide. But from the beginning, Sean's family knew something wasn't right. He was a happy, bright, and loving child who dreamed of becoming president one day. A boy who had just been laughing with his family, excited about life and the future. The details of the scene were unsettling. Sean's arms were strapped to his sides with a belt, a bag was over his head, and he wore his stepfather's oversized clothes instead of his own. His glasses, which he never went without, were missing. For his family, these were not the signs of a boy who chose to end his life.
What's the emergency?
No problem. All units are by
I'm at the corner of Pleasant Hill and John Young Freeway.
Welcome back to Crime Solvers Central, where we dive deep into mysteries and unsolved cases that impact families and communities. I'm Charlie, joined as always by my co-host Jace.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Tonight's case is a tragic and deeply troubling one. The death of 12-year-old Sean Daugherty in Yorktown, Virginia. Authorities quickly ruled it a suicide back in April 2022, but the unusual circumstances left Sean's family and many others convinced that more investigation is needed.
And to help us explore this case, we're joined by someone who has already done extensive coverage. Katie from Tea Time True Crime with Katie. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Hello again. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie and Jace. I am honored to join you both again. And Sean's case is one that has stuck with me because of all the unanswered questions.
We really appreciate you joining us here again, Katie. So let's start with the basics of the case. On April 14th, 2022, Sean was found in his backyard, hanging from a swing set. What makes this case so unusual are the strange details. So, Katie, can you walk us through what was found at that scene?
Yes. So Sean was found partially suspended by a shoelace type cord. His arms were bound to his sides with a belt. And it's not just bound to the sides with the belt. I mean, the belt was so tight around his body when EMS tried to put a defibrillator on the chest, they had a hard time taking off that belt. He had a bag over his head. He was not wearing his normal clothes. Instead, he was dressed in his stepfather's oversized clothing. Yes, Jared, his stepfather. He was barefoot. And his glasses, which he wore every day, he had terrible, terrible eyesight. At that moment, they were missing, but they were found close near Sean's body. And there were people saying that there may have been cracks in the glasses, but they were not found on him at all, just near his body. All of this immediately just raised red flags for the friends and family.
Yeah, and to add to that, he was babysitting his younger brother. Earlier in the day, his mom had asked him to babysit, I believe, his 2-year-old little brother. He had done his homework that he needed to turn in. Apparently, in the middle of taking out the trash, it looked as though he had been taking out the trash. He had a good phone conversation with his mom, a cheerful conversation, just an hour before he was discovered. Nothing about his behavior would suggest that, he was in despair or planning to take his own life.
Exactly, but the official ruling by the chief medical examiner was a suicide. And Sean's family has never accepted that conclusion. And if I were them, I feel like I wouldn't either. They launched the What Happened to Sean campaign, which has since gathered thousands of supporters, a petition, and national media coverage.
So tonight we are going to explore what we know about Sean, the investigation, the inconsistencies, and the larger question about how cases involving children are handled.
And while we'll be sharing theories and concerns that are raised by the family and supporters, we also want to respect Sean's memory and highlight the fight for answers that his loved ones are still carrying forward.
Yes, absolutely. And with that in mind, let's dive into the details. And then we'll move into a series of questions for Katie about what she's discovered in her research.
Tonight, what happened to Sean? It is a story News 3 reporter Ellen Ice has covered from the beginning. A 12-year-old boy whose death was ruled a suicide, and a community that does not agree with that ruling. Ellen shares the family's story on the one-year anniversary of his death.
All right, so Katie, when you looked into Sean's case, what stood out the most to you about the details surrounding his death?
Well, this is going to sound a little odd, but when this little boy was taken away from this world on April 14th, 2022, and then when I started looking into this case, because I actually was at a family gathering and somebody found out I was a podcaster and they're like, you need to look into this. And they were adamant. And I was like, absolutely. Honestly, it's the strangeness of the scene. His arms were bound to like the side, the oversized clothing, and how inconsistent it all felt with the idea of suicide. Now, I did look into that as well because he was 12 years old. And let's keep it real. When you're 12 years old, I feel like that is kind of the worst time for bullying. I think the worst time for me was middle school. A little bit of high school, but I feel like when kids start growing up, right, Jace and Charlie, I think the worst picking and bullying is middle school. It was just insane how they were like, this kid, they're saying they took his own life. And then I started looking at his parents being lieutenant colonels in the Air Force, just coming back from a cruise. Disney cruise, and Sean loved Disney and Sean loved Star Wars. So he was like at his prime. You know what I'm saying? Like, think of you when you're 12 years old. What would have been the best thing at that moment for you? Probably a concert, right? Or one of your favorite, movies. And when I heard that, it was an open shut case and I read the words, it's cut and dry. And the 12-year-old, he had just been so excited, Sean. Like I said, he's 12. Like, what? And he's on top. And it just did not make sense. And I've had people argue with me. Well, Caitlin, the most happy people tend to take their own lives. And I see both sides. But when I looked more into the case, I'm like, no, he was in a very loving family. He was a very smart kid, straight A student, may I add. He was a music prodigy with music. And he just is like this adorable, cute kid who had a lot of love in his life. So I just think that as soon as I heard the word suicide, I'm like, there's no way. I'm sorry. It just doesn't make sense, especially how the kid was hanging. He wasn't hanging by the neck, ladies. He was hanging by his chin.
Yeah, and not even to talk about how the unlikelihood of somebody in his position would commit suicide. It's
Mhm.
entirely possible, of course,
Yeah.
but I want to also talk about the physicality, how it might not even have been physically possible. I've seen people go to lengths about how he might have done this specific thing in this order of events, but when you really look at it, his arms were bound. There was a bag
Mhm.
over his head. I don't see how it was physically possible to do it. And authorities still ruled this a suicide really quickly. From your perspective, how did the speed and manner of that conclusion impact the family's trust in this investigation?
It destroyed it. Absolutely destroyed it. They had the open and cut dry open and cut dry in June. I'm sorry, what? June 2022. So that created completely distrust immediately. For the family, the lack of deeper exploration into alternative explanations felt like it was a dismissal. They felt completely unheard and almost sidelined in every single moment. At the same time, I will say, because there's a lot of people that talk about, oh, it was corruption, it was a cover up. Okay, we're starting with the C's, right? I kind of want to start with the L. I think there was laziness. I think there was so much involved and the case seemed too crazy. They didn't want to stir up a nice neighborhood and have fear everywhere. Because tourism is huge around here. I believe that's where Virginia gets a lot of their money. And it's only 30 minutes away from Williamsburg. And Williamsburg is one of the top visited towns. I know, I couldn't believe it either. We're like, really? Yeah, it's one of the top visited towns in the whole entire United States is Williamsburg. Makes sense. Kind of where it started. Williamsburg, Jamestown, it's where we came from. But as soon as I saw, because I was like researching, I'm okay, well, when does this happen? When does that? They haven't showed the family anything. They're asking for anything. But when you go online and you're like, okay, what is the family seeing? And police are like, oh, they can see whatever they want. They can see whatever they like. But Ramona, the mother, she is saying, we have not seen anything. They will not show us anything. The FBI is involved. They won't tell them anything. Yeah, it's very weird. Very, very weird. It's not good vibes at all.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with everything that you've said so far, and Jace too. And one of the things that I couldn't and still can't wrap my mind around is how could anybody do something like this with their arms bound, tightly bound by their sides? It's, in my mind, physically impossible. Unless you're Houdini, I don't think this kid was into magic. It's physically impossible to be able to do that. Other things that don't make sense to me would be like homework. Why would I do my homework if I'm not planning on being here tomorrow or next week? I would not bother with my homework. It's just so many things and so many questions. But I want to ask, what kind of, in your research and everything that you've seen, like what kind of kid was Sean? What kind of kid is he? What things have his family and friends shared about him?
Excuse me. He was a
You
hero.
get
He was a
He
hero.
was the hero.
Remember when you ladies brought up that the 2-year-old brother was there? Like,
Mhm.
he's still alive. Well, where the brother was found is very controversial. They either say when the brother was found, he was found by a pile of laundry. But in my research, the little boy, the 2-year-old boy, was found inside the laundry basket. So
Mhm.
that tells me that Sean was trying to put his brother and hide him. And he's like, so the brother would be safe. And to be 12 years old and to be that scared, because I feel that he was absolutely terrified. Sean was a funny, loving, smart kid. Like I mentioned before, loved Star Wars, he loved Disney, and he loved reading. And yeah, he wanted to be president one day. There was no history of depression or suicide thoughts, and his family always emphasized how joyful and future focused he was. But at the same time, I think suicide should be thrown out because how tight that belt was. But there are things called asphyxiation, and they say 12-year-old boys hit their puberty. I'm not a boy, I don't know, but I read a lot about how confused little boys are. Their bodies are changing. I mean, right, ladies? Remember our bodies were changing at that time? So someone mentioned, well, maybe he was trying to experiment and he saw something online. Because let's face it, a lot of kids these days are desensitized and they think there's a lot of games that they can play. But to us, we know it's not games. So yeah, I went really deep into this case. I went all avenues. Now, to do that to himself, whether it was asphyxiation, which I do not think so at all, but I'm reading like what people were saying, which is wild. I'm like, at 12 years old, I didn't even know any of it when I was 12, but I'm older, so it's a different generation, I understand. The thing is, that belt was so tight, ladies. His wrists were bruised. So again, that makes us wonder a lot. But to keep his name in the papers, in the media, I think it's very important that we should have another look at this case. This is not cut and dry, and this kid was very happy. Yes, there were bullying. I did look into that, but this kid should be known as a hero because I do believe he saved his little brother. I do. I believe there was
Yeah.
someone else in the house, and I do believe that he hid his brother for safety. So for me, I really think Sean is a hero.
Yeah. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet either that I wanted to just point out real quickly, and I saw it over and over again, and his mom mentioning it, were that he was barefoot and his feet were clean. And there was some back and forth over
Mhm.
whether or not the yard was muddy. Well, even if the yard wasn't muddy, even if the yard was completely dry, his feet still wouldn't be clean,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you'd still have dusty, dirty feet. Or if it was grass, then, they wouldn't be clean. That was also something which would lead me to believe that he was put there,
Yeah, like
not
dragged. Yeah, put there.
like somebody put him there.
Yes. I mean, I do
Yeah.
believe. I do. And what's frustrating is that when you look into the case more, you're going to see different opposing sides. The sheriff is saying one thing, the police are saying one thing, Ramona is saying another thing. That's why I'm saying, with all this back and forth, for the love of God, open back the case. Let's find more answers. If we can't agree to disagree, because they can't, like they are like gung ho on their beliefs, then reopen the case. There's got to be something you missed. There's actually a fingerprint too that was on the glass door of the kitchen that was never taken. And they were saying that they could not get that. It was not enough. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. I'm sorry. That's why I think the laziness or the funding for God knows what, because for a long time, ladies, the funding was cut for a lot of police departments. I will mention that. It was. You actually have DNA evidence still on the shelves, backdated, that still have to be tested for other cases because of lack of employment, lack of funding, what have you. So maybe I will say it's that, because I don't think the police department is being malicious. I do not. I just think they didn't know how to handle it.
One of the other things is, like,
Yeah.
I kept hearing over and over again
Mhm.
is that there was no evidence of a sexual assault. So for me, I'm like, just because there wasn't evidence of a assault doesn't make it not true. Doesn't make it that something couldn't have happened or that the intention wasn't there. Because I fully think somebody did this. I don't
Mhm.
think this child took his own life. I
Yeah.
definitely think somebody came in to the house, or maybe even it was somebody that he might have recognized
Yep.
and was like, there were people doing yard work. Maybe somebody was like, I have to use the restroom. Could I use your restroom? Hey, kiddo. There's just no conceivable possible way this child did this to themselves. Like,
I know, and there are
what do you
so
guys
many
think about that, Jace?
Yeah,
Like,
Jace, what do you
yeah.
think?
There's so many controversial aspects of this case, and one of the other, theories that I saw was that whoever was responsible, for what happened to Sean might have been the one to put his younger brother, uh, in that laundry basket alongside all of that laundry just because it was a way to keep him quiet, and, it's entirely possible. The problem is that we don't know.
There is a theory I'll talk about, ladies. I know I was this is kind of wild, but it kind of makes sense. So I looked into the parents. Okay. So this is a second marriage, but that doesn't matter. Ramona and the first husband divorced young, and they're both remarried. Everything is fine. But Ramona and Jared are high up in the Air Force. We're talking lieutenant colonel. They were supposed to move like less than a month later to another assignment, and they worked in the Pentagon. Now, this is where it gets into wild territory, and I had the chills when I heard this. So this could just be, like, so wild that my body couldn't, like, process what was being told to me. Because I ask other people. It's not just I asked other awesome investigators that I know, and they said the fact that the stepfather's clothing was on Sean, either Sean stumbled upon something or it was such a close window that it was done very quickly because they were trying to send a message to the parents. I was like, "What?" Yeah,
Considering
yes,
the stepfather, if I remember correctly, the stepfather's, dresser drawer was open. So I
yes,
think it was done very quickly. I think
yes.
that is the most likely possibility.
Exactly. And I talk to other people in the military, and they tell me that when someone did them wrong, because of course I can't go in military files, ladies, as much as I want to. I want to be like, well, what did Jared say? What did Ramona say? Who did they fire? Who took what command? You know what I'm saying? What was something that could have really made someone mad? Because, well, what do they do normally? They take the oldest son away. So that could have been a message. And
So the
how
theory is that
yes.
it was a way to target the father?
Yes.
I
It's
see.
it's a way to target the parents in some way, because it happened in broad daylight, guys, 3 o'clock, and there's several houses around. It's not like, you know, that family was in the middle of nowhere. It was in a beautiful, like, suburban home with other houses around. There's, landscapers, and then there was another landscaper that seemed very nervous. Maybe he saw the whole thing, maybe he was threatened. It's just way more things were not, no more avenues were ventured towards down. You know what I'm saying? It just seemed like, oh man, this 12-year-old kid just took his own life. And the reason why his knees were bent because he literally did it to himself, like slowly suffocate. And I'm like, okay, I can see that, but I don't see how the belt was so tight. Like, I'm serious. Like it literally looked like somebody just did it really, really tight. I just wish they looked more into military training because there's certain knots, there's certain, like protocol, especially how was the laces tied? There's all kinds of knots. So, yes, pardon me going on a tangent, but that was a wild theory I heard recently, and my mind is like, yeah, and then another one was, all the kids are on Fortnite, and that was his favorite thing. He loved going on the iPad and playing video games. And what do we see, ladies, more than anything? Catfishing with kids. Adults pretending to be children, trying to lure kids. But 75 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, that was the time frame. 75 minutes. Now, I have other gentlemen that talked to me and they said, well, there's no way it could be anybody from the government because that's too sloppy. It's too sloppy. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think it's from the government. I think maybe he had a personal vendetta against the dad. We don't know. But then it's weird how the police are like, oh, open shut case. So does someone, own higher than the police? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Virginia is full of, I love Virginia. I do. Virginia's for lovers. But there is a lot of, like, shady stuff here. A lot of stuff. Like, I don't even do half the cases on here because I'm kind of afraid. But this one, Sean, has really got me, especially when I saw Ramona just argue, saying, no, my son did not take his own life. No, she's like, we don't want trouble. We just want someone else to look at the case. That's all we want. So I'm not a mom yet, but I feel like it's very important that we do need to listen to Ramona because what other people are describing her as is she's neurotic, she's making things up, she's crazy. Fine, if everyone really thinks that, let's open up the case again. I'm good with a second opinion. How about you, ladies? Jace, Charlie, you're good with that?
Yeah,
Let's
I'm
prove
Y
it
good with
yeah,
this.
bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
let's prove
I'm
it
absolutely.
bonkers. You know?
yeah, I just really strongly feel like take the police away, take the mom away, and the feelings, just the evidence
Yeah.
alone.
There's none.
The
They said there's none.
again, there's no way you could do this yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. Like, I don't. And I watched in a video that I had watched, they showed a pre-recorded police response to the Facebook page and the campaigns and all of those things. We're going to come out and we're going to say what we want to say about this case. And basically, everything was like, we don't make the decision, the ME does. So, okay, you put it off on the ME, fine. But why don't we do this in a way where people can ask you questions? They don't want to be questioned, I think, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's been really rough on the family, I know, and one of their biggest frustrations has been the fact that the sheriff's office refused to release the case file to them. And I mean, I know why that would be so frustrating to me, but for you, why would you think that would be such like a big sticking point for them? What does it suggest about the case?
So the family sees it as a barrier to transparency. They believe if the investigation was thorough, there literally should be nothing to hide. By withholding the file, it feels like the sheriff's office is shutting down questions rather than addressing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the details released, what we do or what don't we know? What do you know about the autopsy? No, I'm like, let's just get to the point. The autopsy report, and how does that square up with like the family's concerns? What do you know about that autopsy report?
Well, the autopsy report, what it says is poor Sean died of asphyxiation. They also confirmed the suspicions, the bag over the head, the belt binding his arms, and didn't really cite any history of depression the examiner did note possible school bullying, but even that seemed minimal. The family's argument is that these details just don't align with a typical child suicide case, and I fully agree with that. They just don't know what to say. I think when they said, okay, the kid died of asphyxiation because he was found hanging, he's 12 years old, we found out there's bullying. It's just very odd because not more questions were asked. And it's very odd because when you go online, you see that the police are like, yeah, they can see the files, like whatever they want. But then when you read the mother's response, Ramona, she's like, I have not seen anything. The local police has kept everything under wraps. Can you please take it to the state police? Can you please take it to the FBI? It's very odd. Some people think she's not being shown the files because you don't want to see your son that way. But I believe that Roma is at the point where she's like, I will see everything if it brings my child justice.
Yeah, I would be the same way. And I do recall us talking about the possibility that if he did do this himself, it might have been a way of experimenting in a way, something that he had seen online. If that were the case, it's interesting to me that at the very least, the investigation didn't reveal anything that would match up in terms of his search history or any of his online activity. You would think that if it were related to something that he had seen either in like a chat room or something, there would be some sort of link.
Yeah,
But as far as I'm aware, there's nothing like that.
nothing.
It's just another very strange aspect. And we also talked about one of the theories before regarding how he was dressed. And he was in his stepfather's oversized clothes instead of his own. And that's been one of the strangest aspects of the case. What other things have people said? What have people theorized about that?
Thank you for, asking that question, Jace. So, theories range from it being a form of staging to someone else dressing him to perhaps a misguided interpretation by investigators that he did this intentionally. But his family insists he was particular about his clothing. I mean, look at the cute kid and his long sleeve shirt with a bow tie. I can tell he really cared about how he looked and how he presented himself. He would have never chosen to wear something that was not his, especially at that day. In fact, the last picture he sent to his mom was he took a picture of his homework being done, and it did not show the stepfather's clothing at all. And it gets weirder. There are parts of his actual clothing still missing to this day. It's wild. There's theories and theories and theories. Again, I really want to get these theories to rest and know exactly the facts because it is frustrating. There are a few podcasts about this, right, Jace, but not enough. And there's so many polarizing theories and what happened here, what happened there. Again, I'm going to say it again, reopen it or give it to the FBI. Let them do it.
It's my turn. I'm sorry. My mind, I was listening to you and my mind was just like going over the absurdity of it again. I'm just like, because you're right. And the way he was dressed, I'm like, so you mean to tell me this child came home, he was watching his brother, he made a snack, he was taking out the garbage, he finished his homework, then he went up, changed it into his stepdad's clothes, and then did this to himself with clean feet and I'm just like, I'm
And
sorry.
remember,
It's
and the two
just
trash bags.
absurd.
Yep, and then the
Yeah,
two trash bags.
the 2 trash bags that weren't their trash bags. How did those get in the house? We didn't mention that. Yeah. I had almost forgotten about that. There were 2 trash bags with different color handles than what this family purchases, and nobody knows where these trash bags came from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you walk us through the What Happened to Sean campaign? How has it grown, and what is the goal of that campaign?
It started out as a local push with signs and a Facebook page and also word of mouth. That's how I found out about it. Then there was a change.org petition, gained thousands of signatures. The campaign has gone national, with media attention and true crime communities amplifying the case. Family's goal is simple, ladies. They just want to get the case reopened or at least reviewed by an outside agency. I recommend going on Facebook, type in the search key, What Happened to Sean, SEAN, and Ramona and loved ones did an amazing job of each circumstance, plot, moment, sharing pictures of Sean because it's brilliant because she's really humanizing her son. It's not just, you're reading about somebody. It's like a true crime case, which, or watching a movie. There's a character. Ramona works very hard into showing birthday time, showing his smile, showing his laughter, just like. And I think it's incredible that a mom just goes to the media, which a lot of people don't like that because they're like, well, maybe she just wants the media. Maybe she just wants to be famous. And I say to that, hush, in the most professional way. Hush. She has not had any book deals. She has not had any TV programs yet, which if it gives us the answer that we all want to know, then yes. But so far, ladies, she just wants another person to look at the case. She even says, I don't want trouble. She doesn't want anybody after her. She's like, can I please just have someone else look at the case? So definitely check out that. Definitely check out the GoFundMe. And again, just go on Facebook because you will fall in love with Sean. I didn't know them before this, but seeing his videos, seeing how he interacts with his families and friends, you begin to feel like, I know this kid. And I think it's very important that we keep talking about him and humanizing him. How do you feel about that, Jace?
I completely agree. I love what they're trying to do, and I really hope that it succeeds. It's so easy to look at a case like this from the outside and think, oh, this person is trying to get media coverage
Mhm.
for whatever purpose they want. But this is a woman who lost her son. I mean, obviously, she wants as much attention on this case as possible, especially when it's officially been closed and there are so many things about it that are questionable. Uh, and of course, from the perspective of a possibly underfunded sheriff's office, they would be defensive about it. Um, and they have pushed back, saying that, a lot of the things that are being discussed online are rumor or a fabrication. How has that public statement that they've given affected the way that people have discussed this case?
Man, it is hardened the divide. Supporters of the family saw it as dismissive and defensive. Charlie, I believe you said that. It was defensive, which some in the public viewed as it is an attempt to protect the department's reputation. And like I mentioned before, this is a huge tourist town. Huge. And it honestly didn't really address the specific inconsistencies, like how many weeks does it take for DNA to go through? Weeks, you know? But that's another thing. They said there is no evidence, there's no DNA, even though there was clearly a handprint on the back of the glass door. But they just said it wasn't enough. And and that handprint did not fit anyone else in the family.
So I know we've talked about different aspects of, his last day, Sean's last day, and certain, details around, babysitting his brother and stuff. But can you walk us through, like, chronologically, like, what did Sean's last day look like?
He was doing normal things, he had homework. He was
Hmm.
babysitting his little brother. He was doing his chores, taking out the trash, and he was having, like, his favorite snack. I believe the pictures I saw either was like a peach or an orange, forgive me, but it is something you peel. And that's what's odd because it was found on top of the counter, fully peeled, about to be eaten. Sean had an amazing relationship with his mom. Ramona loved her son more than anything. They even talked about him being on the toilet while on the phone. He was really excited about going on his iPad. That was the deal. You go watch your brother. When you do that, take your brother into the room. You can play your games with the iPad. And what's really sad is when the investigation, well, if you want to call it that, started, the iPad was still on the charger. Sean never picked up the iPad. So it was the behavior of a kid that's just going out an ordinary day. And again, 75 minutes. The whole entire family's world turned upside down. He was definitely not a kid preparing to end his life. And I know people are like, well, Caitlin, the happiest people, look at Robin Williams, look at, Heath Ledger. And I was like, okay, that's a whole different ballgame there. But I was like, it doesn't matter. The evidence doesn't show it. I thought it kind of did because sadly, when people don't know how to hang themselves, it's a different kind of name. It's called like the loose noose hanging. And I think you heard about that about one of the podcasts, Charlie, because there's different ways people sadly hang themselves. But what I cannot get away from is how tight that belt was. Like, how,
Yeah.
because if it was that tight, Charlie, it would, come apart. You know what I'm saying? So
To
someone
leave
had to
the bruises.
tighten. Yes, and it had to
Yeah.
be buckled.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
he was so clearly in the middle of things.
yes.
Like you said, it was a peach
Mhm.
he was in the middle of a snack.
Yeah.
Only like
It
half of
was
the garbage had been taken out.
yes.
So he's in the middle of taking out the garbage. Like he was in the middle of things to just stop and be like, I think this is what I'm going to do is completely absurd.
Yeah, and then people will
Doesn't make
no,
any sense.
it doesn't, and then you go into, well, look at this sister, sadly, Marie, 16 years old, found him, and so there's people saying, well, Marie probably did it or somebody, and I was like, no. The way she was devastated and how fast she got her brother off that dang swing by lifting him up. That's not somebody, So again, I mean, I want Mr. Ballin, you know what I'm saying? Like other big people to cover this, you know what I'm saying? Dateline even. I haven't seen anything on Dateline about it, which is insane. I'm like, they should really open this case. But again, the police is just like cut and dry, open and shut case.
I know. I
Yeah.
completely agree. And some online discussions, ours included, we've all raised the possibility of foul play just with all the facts that are presented and all of the inconsistencies. And of course, we don't want to be irresponsible with the way that we're speculating, but we're just going off of what we know and what has been presented. And what do you think? What are some of those arguments that people have raised for the possibility of foul play?
I mean, the
Just to go
binding.
into a little more specifics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's thank you, Jace. So it's the bindings, it's the bag, and it's the clothing. So, but then it gets weirder because all these things were in the home because the bag is like a motorcycle helmet bag that was in the garage. The bindings were apparently, I do not know, but there were boots in the garage and those laces were gone. So there's so many different things. These details seem extremely like insane for a child just to snap, go take a helmet bag, cover his face, get the shoelace. That's why I want to focus on the bindings. I want to focus on the knots. How was he tied? You know? I mean, seriously, there are different ways that you can tie a knot. That's what I want to know. You know what I'm saying? Was there a different kind of military tie? But it had to be a very strong tie because I don't know about you ladies. Have you tried to tie something and then like you think it's like, like, oh yeah, I tied it good and then like falls off like
Oh,
later?
yeah. Falls apart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It falls apart.
All the time.
So somebody in some kind of professional had to know how to tie to hold up a body. That's what we have. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it was like a shoelace cord. That's just so, like, too intricate for just a child to do. So, without us having the full investigative file, ladies and gentlemen, we just have a lot of questions. We do not have a lot of confirmed facts. We really don't. And what's really sad is because we're getting different answers from both sides, which is frustrating because you would think everybody would be on the same side, and they're not.
And how do you think the bullying played into into this case or equation? Like, do you think that it was another thing that authorities could maybe push the narrative of him taking his own life? Like, how much do you think the bullying? He seemed like he was a super happy kid. Do you know when it had happened? I'm trying to remember from what I watched. It sounded like it had happened like quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Or do you know, was it more recent?
No, I read that it was, like, months and months ago, but, his family
Okay.
said Sean really didn't seem deeply affected by it. If kids are being bullied, what do they not do? If it's a really bad bullying, they don't tell anybody. So him going to his mom and telling him about it must have not been a big deal. I think it irked him, but the one kids that are really, really bullied and they don't wanna tell their parents because sadly they start to believe it. But Sean wasn't like that. Sean was very smart and he was very positive, and I loved the relationship in that household. Yeah, I mean, yes, there was divorce that happened, but again, it didn't seem to, like, mess up the family dynamic. Because even the 16-year-old sister, like Marie, she absolutely loved her brother. Like, she wants to know what is going on, and I can't imagine the 5-year-old. Yeah, they have another, they had a 5-year-old at the time, but the 5-year-old was with the stepfather, Jared, at the time, because people were pointing at the stepfather because the stepfather's clothes. And I'm like, he was all the way in Williamsburg. That's like a 34, 40-minute drive. And he had a son with him. So that's like great alibi, personally. That's like airtight right there. But no, I don't think Like I said, ladies, bullying, it's a horrible, horrible thing. It is. But again, I don't think this has anything to do with happened to Sean.
Yeah, people saw the oversized clothing from the stepfather and immediately started pointing fingers at him, but it is
Mhm.
really important to note that he had a pretty airtight alibi in the moment. He was with his son, and I believe they were shopping. I could be wrong about that, but they were together
Yeah.
at the moment that this happened. And I mean, all of this case in particular, it really does bring up a larger question about transparency when it comes to child death investigations. From your research, how common is it for files like this to be withheld?
Well, I mean, I know that in this day and age, it's very difficult to get anything. It really is. And it could be the psychology of it. Sadly, if a person's child passed away, the police don't want to, hey, here are the crime scene photos or here's the autopsy photos. They'll think probably the parents will be completely messed up about it, like mentally. Some people have breakdowns, some people end their own lives. So I feel like things are withheld about that. Now, do I think police departments are being really malicious about it? No, I don't. Because to be in the law enforcement field is very difficult, especially this day and age. All right. So, I mean, definitely, there's good and bad in everything, just like we talked about last podcast, ladies. So I don't want to think that the police, it was a huge cover up and corruption. I don't want to think any of that. I think they were just not equipped or prepared. I think that when they saw the weirdness of the case and there was too many variables, too many avenues to go across. And I think it is on a case to case basis. But this one was like, I don't know. I just think the police don't want to cause panic. They don't want there to be a killer on the loose for the towns to go panic. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It's hard, ladies, because it's very different in this day and age with children. I don't know if you guys remember, but a lot of kids nowadays are very desensitized. So sadly, a lot of the times I looked up in cases, they're not taken seriously by police until it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking at, Sean's story and like bigger picture, what does this say or tell us about the challenges that families face when they disagree with official findings?
Oh my God, it shows awful. Like they're powerless. Like, what can I do? So once a cause of death is declared, getting another agency to step in is actually extremely difficult because number one, that shows that, oh, I did something wrong. We overlooked something. You're going to make us look really, really bad. I mean, it could be pride. Who knows? I mean, I would love to know your suggestions, ladies. Why? But families often have to turn to the media or public campaigns to get attention. And what's awesome about that, it's not just awesome Dateline and all them. It's hello, we're YouTubers. We have hearts. We love people. And people listen to our platform, which I'm sure we're very grateful and fortunate for our watchers and viewers. And there's so many different avenues for the families to go to, which I think I love. I think it's amazing. But because TV, it's in everywhere, right? But not everybody does commercials anymore. Everybody streams. So that's why YouTube is like more popular than cable now. Yeah. I think that's really, really cool. But again, it just shows that you show more relevance with people. You know what I'm saying? Like, people want to be humanized, like the people who are not here on this earth anymore. Sometimes the media, not us, but some parts of media try not to look at them as like human beings, kind of. Have you ever seen some news reports and you're like, dang, that was cold? Why would you say that, right? But when you have awesome indie podcasters like us that do the research, that look at all the pictures, that spend days, hours, a longer length of time, then you start seeing the inconsistencies with the police department. But at the same time, the police do have the final say. I just wish they would just open their hearts and, swallow their pride and be like, you know what? I think something's missing here. Something just doesn't seem right. Instead of just like hiding it in the back of their minds and going to sleep every night. Because I don't know about you ladies, I couldn't do that.
I couldn't either. I mean, I understand that when you're in that field, uh, law enforcement is very quick to become desensitized just because they deal with hundreds, if not thousands of cases like this all the time. And I think that at that point, some of those cases just become a number in their minds. And when we're covering these sorts of cases one by one, we're able to more humanize the person that we're
Mhm.
talking about. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that shouldn't ever be lost. I
Yes.
think that's really important to sort of preserve as we go forward. And I know, Katie, as somebody who has covered this case and others that are like it, what impact has Sean's story had on you personally?
It's absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, he was a kid, 12 years old, completely full of life and potential. And his family's pain is extremely raw, and unanswered questions linger. And it's important that, you know, we need to cover these cases because these stories matter. We have to keep the conversation alive and push for accountability. And I'm very grateful that, shout out to Baxter, that he brought this case. And it was just random. He heard that I was a true crime podcaster. We're at a cookout. And he's like, hey, Kate, you need to look at this. And it's wild that I didn't hear. But again, I don't really have TV. I don't have commercials. I stream. I'm a streamer. And I read a lot more anyway. Um, so I was just surprised, and it really hit me. Like, I was talking to my husband George and I was sobbing. And I'm like, could you imagine if we had a child? What would you do? What would you do? And he just doesn't know what to say. And then my friends and my best friend who just went to the cabin with, she was just like, I would go to the media. That's what I would do. I would never stop fighting for my son. And I was like, that's what Ramona's doing. And Jace, Charlie, everyone here at this awesome podcast, you're doing that as well. And I'm very, very grateful that you guys are doing that.
Thank you. We're grateful that you're here doing it with us. So, if Sean's family was sitting across from investigators today, what do you think their single biggest request from them would be?
I think a lot of requests is what they would like. But when you're put on the spot like that, I think the main thing that they would like, and sorry for the chuckle, I laugh, guys, under, tense anxiety circumstances. It's just like a coping mechanism. Nothing about this is funny. This is actually horrific and sad, so I apologize. But they would want the case file. They want to know exactly what they know. They want to know exactly what they are looking at and what did they miss. Because another thing that blew my mind was there was blood on his arm or something like that, and there was blood on his hand, but she said that somebody like wiped it off and said there's no blood there. So again, guys, we can go on and on and on. We don't know what's true. We don't know what's false anymore, and I think that's really, really sad. But that also tells me is people are talking about it, but it's kind of being like telephone. Remember that famous game? Okay, Jace and Charlie, that game Telephone blew my mind when we played it. One person says one thing and it goes all the way around the room to come back and it's completely not even what you said. I think that's what's going on in this case. So I think the parents would be like, hey, you know what? Why don't you just release the case file? It would bring clarity, it would bring accountability, and perhaps it will bring closure to my family because I'm not forgetting my son.
What happened to Sean? That's the question circulating social media, and with these signs popping up all over the peninsula, the community wants answers.
Losing a child is just one of the worst things that could ever happen to anyone, and we would never wish it on people we didn't even like.
Ramona and Jared Rivas say their 12-year-old son's death is suspicious. Sean Daugherty was found hanging from a swing set in his backyard on April 14th. They have several concerns, one of them being this. The EMT report states, quote, law enforcement responded to a residence for a suicide.
When you arrive at the crime scene, the first thing you do is investigate crime because you don't know what it is.
The Rivas family feels that there are too many questions from that day, to include the way Sean was found, with his arms bound to his sides, bag over his head, wearing his stepfather's clothes. They say he was shoeless, but his feet were clean.
He had nothing on his feet and the feet were totally clean as to get to the swing set this far.
Just to mention, before we cover any case that's open or that appears unresolved, we do contact the lead investigative agency. And we did the exact same thing here. Even though this case is officially closed, we didn't receive a response. If you work with Yorktown Police and you have feedback, we're listening. Please reach out to Crime Solvers Central, and we'll gladly update this video description with any information that you have.
And Katie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank
This
you.
has been, thank you. It's been a really heavy, but incredibly important discussion and conversation to have. Before we close, I want to ask, what do you think is the single most important thing that people should take away from Sean's story?
I think the most important thing that people should take away is that he was human. He was a child. He was a son. He was a friend. He was someone that people love and were loved very, very much. I think it's very important that, yes, we need to stick to the facts, but we also need to put ourselves in their shoes. And we need to put ourselves in the family shoes and not always just stick to the book per se. Because when I hear that language, cut and dry, I'm like, is that book talk? You know what I'm saying? Like cut and dry, you know? No, it wasn't. This is a ailing family that is just wanting to know what happened. They're not trying to blame anybody, but one thing they're saying is that please just reopen the case. So I think the biggest thing is again, put yourself in their shoes. What happened, what do you think would happen if, Charlie had a son or Jace had a son? How would you react? Treat people how you want to be treated, as I feel like the main tagline I would get from this case.
And it is so easy to get lost in the theories and in the speculation, but at the heart of this is a grieving family who just wants answers. And, to me, that's just what makes this case so haunting. I mean, it's the silence, not just the silence, but the pushback that they've been met with. And what they need most is transparency.
Exactly. And cases like Sean's remind us about the difficulties that families often face and the uphill battles that they have when they disagree with official findings. The What Happened to Sean campaign is more than just a hashtag. It's a call for justice and a demand for accountability.
Now, if you've been moved by Sean's story tonight, there are ways that you can help. First, you can visit and support the What Happened to Sean campaign on social media. Share their posts, sign their petition, and help keep Sean's name in the public eye. Second, if you have any information at all that could be relevant to this case, no matter how small, reach out to the Yorktown Sheriff's Office or submit your information through verified tip lines. And finally, you can join us here at Crime Solvers Central. Part of our mission is amplifying these cases, and you can make a difference just by spreading awareness.
Sean's family deserves answers. The community deserves answers. And Sean himself deserves to be remembered for the light he brought into this world, not just the questions surrounding his death.
I completely agree. Cases like this remind us how important it is to not look away, not to let a story fade into silence. The more people talk about Sean, the greater the chance that one day the truth will come out and family will have absolute closure.
And again, Katie, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insight. And for anybody who would like to catch any of your newest videos, do you have anything coming up on your channel?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Jace and Charlie. Um, I I upload videos a couple times a month. I do true crime content and dark content as well. I'm also on live on TikTok that people that want to have discussions of true crime and astrology as well. So don't forget to like and subscribe and comment all the good vibes. And remember, you are loved, you are cherished, and you are doing better than you think. Thanks, ladies, again.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you to everyone listening. Please, if you want to support Sean's family, check out their campaign and share this episode so more people hear Sean's story.
We'll continue bringing you the cases that matter, the stories that still need answers, right here on Crime Solver Central.
Yes, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and stay loud.